Professor Wergeles here. You're working on your final project. You got multiple scenes. Now we're finally getting the scenes to switch. We fixed the scene, get scene problem by passing the scene from the main class. And now we want to transfer data. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this if statement. That was just a basic check. I also have an if statement on page 2 controller just to make sure. And the if statement's not a bad thing to have. It may be good to have an if here and then put an else and display an error message if for some reason you can't transfer back to scene 1. So this if may not be a bad thing to keep. But what I want to show you is how to transfer data. So you'll see here I get data to transfer. This is a method I built. It basically just is a text input dialog. You can type some data. If you type some data, we'll pass back the result as a string. Okay, so now I have the string result and I'm ready to pass it over to controller 2. All this code here is setup code. Okay, it's just creating the FXML file, getting the root, getting the controller, passing the stage, and creating the scene. Once I set the scene, I can then pass over the data, or I can even do it right before I set the scene. Both will work. And you'll see I have a variable over here in the controller. So in page 2 controller, I have info. I also have a text field or an info label. These are all things that I can switch. So let's say you have a login page and you want to say hello and then their username. Okay, you can either use a model and in the controller 2, call the get username method, or you can pass it over to one of the variables in the controller. Okay, so in page 1 controller, right after I set the scene, I'm going to set data in 2 different ways. One, I'm going to access the variable directly. You probably wouldn't access the variable directly in your application. You'd probably have a getter and a setter method. But I'm accessing page 2 controllers, info, and I'm just going to hard code it to hello world. Okay, I'm going to hard code it to hello world. So if I comment this out, let's see what it is before. So if I run this, and I'm just going to leave my screen share. It's going to look funny for some reason when I drag it over. Page 2 will be really small. Okay, so you'll see I'm going to click on OK. Page 2 is small. You'll see data from page 1. Okay, so if I uncomment this out, save it. I don't know why that looks small. It's something when I drag this over to the other monitor. I go to page 2. Here's the text input dialog. I didn't type anything. You can see I can pass that data over. When I go over to page 2 controller, I need to actually use it. Okay, I need to actually use it. So over in page 2 controller, let's say in the start method, okay, in the start method, I can actually change this. So I can say, okay, info label, go ahead and set the text with the variable info. Okay, so when I run this, info was set in page 1 controller. So I'm going to show the app so it doesn't look funny. It's over here. So go to page 2. Little pop-up appears. I don't know if you can see that. I click on OK. And then you'll see here. Now, in order for this to work, I'm not calling the start method each time. So when I come over here to page 2 controller, it's calling the start method once at the beginning, and then it's not setting this info label. Okay, so it wasn't working. I did a few tests with an if statement to see why. Okay, and I'm not calling this start method. So if I want to change the info label each time, I need to call the start method each time. So you may want a different method to call. Maybe you can set the info, and whenever you set the info, it also changes the info label. So let's create a method here. I'm going to take this out of the start method because we only need the start method once the page loads. I'm going to create another method. Okay, and I'm going to call it setInfo. And setInfo will take a string and basically do exactly this. Okay, you'll see I have info up here at the top. So it could also set the global variable. That way, if we need it in other places, we can also use it, and then it should set the text. So if I come back to controller 1, I'm going to call the setInfo, which is actually a better way to do it instead of just hard coding a variable, you want your variables to be private. So this is actually a cleaner way to do it. So if I run this, okay, let me show you the app over here. So here's page 1. If I go to page 2, there's a pop-up. I click on OK, and you'll finally see hello world. So that's working correctly. But what if we want to actually show the data from the pop-up? Okay, we don't have to just hard code data, although we could pass the username over like this. So this could be set username or set user info. We can also collect data from the user. So let's say they want to pick their game level, or they want to enter some data to the application. We can grab that data and pass it over to the next page. Okay, so it'd be a similar concept. I'd have a method over there in page 2 controller. And I have something called change something. And we're just basically going to pass over the result. Okay, we'll pass over the result. You see, I put a little if statement here. I was trying to do a little debugging. Okay, so if I run this, I'm going to bring it over to this screen, although it's going to look funny. I'm going to click go to page 2. That way you can see the pop-up. I'm actually going to enter something. So I'll put my name, Nick. I'll click on OK. You'll see it goes to page 2, and you'll see Nick is over here next to the text field. Okay, if I go back to page 1, this is actually all messed up. I can show you on the other screen. Let me run this again. Now you see what that pop-up looks like. Let me show you over here. So here's go to page 2. Pop-up appears. I'm going to type in Nick. Click on OK. You'll see Nick appear. If I go back to page 1, you'll see page 1 again. If I click go to page 2, I can type in another name. Let's say I type in Sam. Click on OK. Now you'll see Sam is being displayed. So you can display their user information based off of what they logged in or what information they've typed. Depends on what information you're passing. And we can pass over information back to page 1. So let's say we're on page 2 and somebody types something in that text field. When I go back to page 1, okay, this if statement's not a bad idea. Go ahead and keep it. I would do the same. If I don't have a model yet, I would say page 1 controller. And I'd say do this thing, whatever the method's called. And we would basically say this is the info I sent you. And we can say it's from. And we can add whatever they typed in the text field. So the result would be text field. I have a text field there. And I can say get text. So if I run this and share the application, I'm going to go to page 2. I'm going to type in Nick. Click on OK. You'll see Nick is up here in the left. Here I'm going to type in Sam. Go back to page 1. And you'll see here is the information from Sam. Go to page 2. Information pops up. I'll type in Dave. Click OK. You'll see Dave over here. I'm going to change the name to Nick. Go back to page 1. You'll see message sent from Nick. So I'm passing data back and forth. Now, a more clean way to do this would be to have a model. Okay, once you get MVC set up, passing data will be even easier. From page 1, you go to page 2. When you're in page 2, you can call the start method, and then you can have your model here. You can say model, or you can even be like the user model. You may define them more specifically. User model dot get username. Okay, you call the method here, and you can store that in a variable in the controller. So you can have a string, maybe a global variable called username is equal to this. Okay, I don't have the model set up, so I can't really show you that. What I'm doing is passing data from controller to controller. You can also pass data from the model to the controller, which is how you should do it when you're implementing MVC. Okay, just a quick overview. We copied the start method from the main class and we copy that over to page 1 so we can create page 2. Once we have page 2, page 1 has already been created, so I basically just say stage.setScene back to page 1. If I'm on page 1, I want to go to page 2 again. page 2 has already been created, so I don't need to create it again. So then I can say stage.setScene and go back to page 2. And I can also pass data if I need to. Okay, but this is a quick and easy way to get it set up. Once you have MVC, I recommend using the model. Okay, this is a basic example to switch scenes. Let's take a look at the switcher example, which is a better code base to use for your final project. Stick with Professor Wergeles, and we'll see you in the next video.